And we are live. I'll go ahead and call to order the regular meeting of the City Council for October 3rd, 2022. I spoke with Councilmember Saunders. He has a new health issue and so won't be joining us today or maybe for a little while. With that, thank you everyone who came out for the flag raising ceremony commemorating the opening of City Hall. Really, we didn't get a chance to have a ribbon cutting, as when we opened up it was in the middle of COVID. We did have a little open house, but now that we've got the signage and everything and we're at substantial completion, it was nice to finally close that one out. So with that, Invocation and Pledge of Allegiance is up next. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for this opportunity to be in this new building, Lord, with the amenities, a better council chamber, and the ability to stream live, and many other benefits, Lord. We thank you for those that are protecting us throughout the night and day, our first responders, police, fire, EMTs, and those who are serving the community at large. Lord, I ask for wisdom today. I ask that you grant the City Council and myself wisdom as we go about doing the people's business, that we may act in their interest, Lord. In Jesus' name we pray, amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. The next order of business is the approval of the minutes. Y'all received a copy of the September 19th City Council minutes in your packet. If there's no discussion on that, I'd entertain a motion to adopt.
So moved.
We're going to motion and a second to adopt the City Council meeting minutes from September 19th, 2022. Any discussion on that? Seeing none, all those in favor say yes.
Yes.
All opposed, no. Motion carries. We will move on to public comment. I've got one public comment card from Janet Watkins. Ms. Watkins, if you could please come down, state your name and address for the record. You have 3 minutes, ma'am.
My name is Janet Watkins. I live at 11400 Crystal Hill Road in the city limits of Maumelle.
Thank you.
You may
proceed, yes, ma'am.
Okay. I came with some questions that I need to get answers to, and it all pertains to Crystal Hill Road, which has been an ongoing project for over 2 years. It passed the 2-year mark in September. It's less than 3 miles, and there was like $3 million to build it with. The money's been set aside and been sitting there for 10 years. So the Friday before Labor Day, all work down there stopped. And I'd like to know why it stopped. I haven't been able to really get an answer from anybody. I want to know when it's starting back up, and I want to know when this job's going to be complete. And we're enjoying the blacktop. It's really nice. It comes down to Count Massey, but there's still another mile or so to go. The median and the sides and everything are grown up in weeds that are almost as tall as I am. And now it's becoming a real fire hazard. All it takes is one cigarette, and all of that sagebrush and weeds and dry is so dry that all that stuff will go up, you know, and start a major fire, which is a concern right now. The sides and the high banks were never dressed up, and I don't think they were ever sodded or seeded or whatever they're going to do with them. And the last time we had a major rain, it turned to mud and it all washed down on the new blacktop, which was leaving us in another muddy mess. And besides all of that, it's ugly. We don't have any road signs, street signs, no street lights at all. There's no speed limit signs. I asked the construction guy who was out there one day working on a fence if there was some way to get a stop sign put up just at the end of Counts Massey. People were just flying through there, they don't even slow down. I mean, they just come up. People are still driving up the lanes the wrong way because there's no markings, no speed limit signs, so now it's turned into a raceway, which, by the way, something that really needs to be nipped in the bud is the weekend nights, Friday night and Saturday night street racing, because it's got two nice big wide lanes. You line a car up here, put two hot-headed teenagers in there, and they're racing. And Little Rock has a real problem with that. We don't want that out here at all. It's dangerous. I've not seen a police car down there in months, and they may be coming at night when I'm asleep, I don't know. But I would like to get some answers as to why the construction has all stopped, if anybody would like to address that. And is the money all gone, or the guy's not getting paid? The construction foreman told me he didn't know why it was stopped. The city shut it down. I talked to Mike about getting the grass cut. He said, well, city couldn't do it because it was under the jurisdiction of the contractor. Contractor said, well, we can't do anything now because the city shut it down. So we're just needing some answers. Me and the, 3 or 4 dozen people that live down there. And guess who they call to find out? So that's why I'm here tonight. Thank you for listening to me. And I'm here to find out if somebody can tell me why the construction stopped. Perfect weather. It's dusty, but, perfect fall weather. They should be working 7 days a week to get this done. It's just gone on long enough. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. The next order of business is the financial statement review. That'll be at the second meeting. So we move to the procedural motion. At this time, I entertain a motion to have all ordinances and resolutions read by title only.
So moved.
I've got a motion and second. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say yes.
Yes.
All opposed, no. Motion carries. We move on to unfinished business. The first item of unfinished business is the third reading of Ordinance 1073, amending the Maumelle Land Use Plan. Madam City Clerk, if you could please read that by title only.
Be it enacted by the City Council of the City of Maumelle, County of Pulaski, State of Arkansas, an ordinance to be entitled Ordinance Number 1073, an ordinance amending the Maumelle Land Use Plan and Map, and for other purposes.
All right, this is on third reading. Is there any discussion on that? Councilmember Gardner?
Would you like for me to do a planning commission report, sir?
Yeah. I didn't see it on the, I didn't see it.
Sorry.
Please, planning commission report would be perfect.
It related to this, so I was just going to mention that. No, we've been looking at these projects. We're at Stone Canyon for a couple of meetings now, and this was also on the agenda at the planning commission this past month. And they gave a unanimous due pass to the city council for the proposed preliminary development plan that we will see later. Then there was also a couple of code amendments that were passed along to us, and we'll see those on our agenda tonight as well. And those were both given unanimous due passes to the council. And then lastly was a master street plan amendment, which is also in our packet, and they gave that a unanimous due pass. So everything was a unanimous due pass. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. With that, is there any discussion on Ordinance 1073? If not, I'd entertain a motion to adopt Ordinance 1073. I've got a motion and a second. Madam City Clerk, roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Mosley?
Mr. Mayor, I would have liked to discuss that. This is Stone Canyon, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I would like to discuss that before we go into a vote.
Floor's all yours.
Is that all right?
Yes, sir.
All right. Yeah, I had the opportunity to go out and tour the actual rock quarry that's the proposed bicycle path recreational area today. Mr. Roy Andrews was kind enough to meet me out there and give me a tour, and I'm still shaking pine needles out of my clothes here. I think that would be a nice feature. I don't know if other people have had a chance to go out and tour, but I am going to be a no vote on this. I feel like we need to keep this as low-density housing. So I'm not in favor of changing the land use or the zoning on this. I think we need to have a traffic study done of that whole 365 area before we get fancy and do anything more than just R1. But I think there's going to be room for more development out there, and we don't want the same problem there at that intersection by come and go that we've had on Maumelle Boulevard going to 430. So I am going to be a no vote on this. And that's all I've got on this issue. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Really quickly, in response to that, Mr. Grummer, I believe there were some comments at the first meeting about a traffic study and the need for it or not for it. And there were some statements made regarding what was believed to be your position on that. Could you chime in there? I know you're familiar with that conversation.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. So I believe the previous meeting, there was conversation about, conversations that you and I had, Mr. Councilmember, about traffic studies and RDOT's requirements and whatnot. My conversation with the Arkansas Department of Transportation has been dealing with North Maumelle in the commercial area on 365, where it's a 4-lane road and where we want future development for the potential of improvements to that section of 365 for traffic lights or whatnot to help development of that area. One of the things they did say was, before we make any improvements there, then a corridor study would be needed. But that's unrelated to this development. That section of Highway 365 gets about 22,000 vehicle trips per day. The area of 365 where this development is going shows about 4,500 vehicle trips per day, which is significantly under what the arterial would be able to handle, between 12 and 18,000, depending on how RDOT determines when you upgrade a road. So the applicant actually did do a traffic analysis of this subdivision, and that traffic analysis did show, after it's fully developed out, which would take many years, of approximately 4,000 average daily trips a day. But that's split out between 2 access points from this development, some going to 365, some going to Old Maumelle Road. But it was sufficient enough that all the roads within this development are sufficient to handle the traffic. And then the increase from what the planning department has determined with this whole development would not increase 365 in this area that would warrant any changes or anything. So the development itself is actually sufficient for the state of the road as it is now. So RDOT does not require any traffic study for this development on 365. But one thing that we are trying to work with them is potentially a corridor study that we can work with from a city standpoint for future development of the commercial area of the corridor. So.
Thank you, sir. Councilmember Mosley.
Yes, sir. We had also spoken, you mentioned you might be doing your own traffic study throughout Maumelle, try to look at where traffic is, what the capacity of the streets are and that sort of thing, and the potential for more development without forming gridlock at certain times. And that's really what I would like to see is that. I realize RDOT does not care that much about beyond that one intersection, but I am worried that over time there will be more neighborhoods and that sort of thing, and it will become a deal where we've got Maumelle people backing up over the bridge, waiting to get through that intersection. I think we need to be cognizant of that and figure out what it is the capacity can be before that starts happening, because I don't know if there's a way to make a third entrance out there or a fourth entrance or whatever to bypass that point. So.
Well, and one thing that I'd also mention to council members is that our annual new construction, residential new construction building permits is approximately 100 homes a year more. So if you figure and that's across the entire city. That's from Country Club of Arkansas to the west part. So when we're growing at a rate of about 100 homes per year, you're not really adding a lot of traffic at it's incrementally very slow over a period of time. So having these subdivisions, even though it looks like a lot of houses, they don't come in all at once. It comes in very slowly, gradually, and then we adapt and we grow as we go.
I would be in favor of you doing that one traffic study you talked about, so thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Councilmember Mazzoni?
Yeah, also for a question for Mr. Grummer. So I started out as very reluctant on this for different reasons for Councilmember Mosley. The size, I was looking at more the size of the homes there and the multifamily. I got it, we need that because of what's going, to get the trails in. My concern on that is if we approve this, and let's face it, we've got some uncertain economic coming at, if the housing market starts falling and someone else picks this up and decides to put apartments in, would we have any ability to say no to that really wouldn't match?
Yes.
Oh, okay, that was a concern.
That's part of, so the land use, which is what you're voting on this one, is for special use residential. The PRD would be planned residential development or district. And out of that goes through the planning commission as well as city council for approval. You can deny it if you feel like it's not inappropriate based on the plan.
Okay. Secondly, is the size. I agree that we need some development out there. I mean, it doesn't look much nice like the rest of Maumelle, and if we get stuff in there, there is room for business growth out there. Our Maumelle Forward is old. So it's kind of hard to see what the third order impacts of this with the size and nature of this community. How will this go? I don't know what our long-term impacts on there. Will this be a benefit or more because of the size? Would that hurt more businesses coming in to that area?
Well, I'll say that we did receive public comments from local businesses there in North Maumelle.
That's my next question.
And they were all for it. They said, if you don't increase the number of bodies in the city, then you're not going to increase the customers who are going to be shopping in our stores. So to me, the residential component is a critical component to serve and to support our commercial entities, both on 365, but also in Maumelle, because those residents are going to come to Kroger to shop for their groceries. They're going to come into Kroger for some of the other essentials because we're the closest city to them. And that's where you want your revenue dollars to come from. So I would say that it would be very valuable. And allowing the market bear, you currently have a developer that wants a residential development. We've evaluated it, we've looked at it. It's not considered a high density, and when people think of density in terms, it's really low density. The Maumelle Forward you referenced, which is outdated, and we have been referring to it, but it's just a guide, it's something that we don't necessarily use. It stated medium density residential. This doesn't even fall within the medium density residential as we have it defined in the ordinance. So overall, the majority of it is single family residential, which is the majority of the city of Maumelle. When you look across the railroad tracks, I did some analysis of the numbers of houses, the density there, close to 4 units per acre in the Diamond Park area. This is between 4 and 5 units per acre in this development. They have included townhomes, but that is also too because they're giving up a lot of land for public use, which is very unique for a development. So I think it's unique opportunity for the city of Maumelle, so that's why the planning department does support it, and I believe why it got the support from the planning commission.
All right, yeah, I read Mr. Polk had a pretty good letter, and you said there were also, because he alludes that there are others that were contacting you as well, so you had a good amount of the businesses out there in favor.
And adjacent property owners have stated for it because they see this as being a positive for them to be able to develop their land. And if you look at the majority of the land on the north side of the railroad tracks, the majority of it is large tract vacant land.
Yeah.
There is a lot of rural housing in the area, but there's a lot of large tract vacant land to be developed, and that's future opportunity for the city of Maumelle. So with that, I think it's important for the Planning Commission and the City Council to be cognizant of those opportunities. It's going to bring potential revenue dollars into the city. It may not be commercial, but it is going to be mouths that are going to, and people that are going to spend their dollars here.
All right, thanks.
Thank you, sir. Councilmember Shin?
I reached out to our first responders and I heard back from the police department, and they said that half of our officers live in the city. The other half, there are some that do have homes in other areas or property in other areas, but the majority of those others would like to live here and can't afford to, or they can't find a place. So I think that is something that we also need to think about when we're looking, we keep talking about our numbers of law enforcement, and if we grow, we need more law enforcement. But if they're having to drive, some of them that drive as much as 45 minutes to get here, and then 45 minutes home. One of the benefits we have, if you live in the city, you get to take a patrol car home. So we start looking at, well, we can't have less expensive homes than $300,000 or $400,000, which is what we seem to approve most of the time. I think we really need to think about that, because it's hurting our city employees.
Thank you, sir. One other thing that I think about quite often is I would love my kids, though they're 7 and 4 right now, I'd love for them to be able to and want to live in Maumelle if they so chose throughout their stages of life. I could probably ask around at how many people in this room have young adults, 20-somethings, kids that have chosen to live in Maumelle. And the answer is going to be not many. And we've got a development here that is a mix it's got its own mountain bike trails and system that really add something to the community that we don't have. And this is what young adults are looking for. And we just don't cater to that. We're creating a city where your kids cannot grow up and live in this city. Or if they could, they don't want to. And so we have to do something to make sure that we have housing stock for all different varieties of people. I want my kids to live here. I don't want them to feel like they have to go to Northwest Arkansas if they want a more vibrant community that suits their needs. Councilmember Mosley?
I think the question got answered. I'm sorry.
Thank you, sir. Councilmember Gardner?
Yeah, I feel like I've said this before, and I agree with what Councilmember Shin and Mayor Norris just said. We've got to have diverse housing options in our city. I lived in an apartment for 9 years as an adult, and that's just a choice I made. And kids these days, we say that a lot, they do not want to buy a single-family house. Seniors may not want to buy a single-family house. We have several townhome projects that are under construction right now that I have a feeling will sell very quickly as soon as they are completed, very quickly. So just to have some diverse housing options that can attract different types of people that want to live in different areas. I would love to live in an area that had parks and trails and a mountain bike course in it. So we talk about we don't want to increase traffic, but then in the next sentence we say we have to boost our commercial. They come together, and when commercial sees that we are increasing our population and increasing traffic, commercial will follow. So I'm all for it. I think we just have to have different residential styles, and I hope that people that are considering Maumelle won't be afraid to propose something and let us look at it. I would love to see what people have to propose and want to develop here. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Councilmember Mosley?
Yeah, I would just say that I've lived out here for 35 years, and we've heard this for 35 years, that the more rooftops we get, the more commercial we'll get. And we've gone through phases where we've had gridlock traffic, and the residents had to bankroll $26 million worth of a third entrance out there. And it just seems like the commercial doesn't follow as fast as everybody thinks when you add more rooftops. There was a lot of promises when we put in that third entrance that there'd be a lot of commercial out there, and that would solve all of our problems, and we haven't really seen it. So I guess I've got doubts about whether that's really going to work out in the long term or not. So thank you.
Thank you. I'd remind the council, it's also difficult to add commercial when we continue to pass ordinances that make it more difficult for people to develop their land. If there's no further discussion, we do have a motion and a second on Ordinance 1073. Madam City Clerk, roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Mosley?
No.
Councilmember Mazzoni?
Yes.
Councilmember Gardner,
Yes.
Councilmember Williams, Councilmember Tierney,
Yes.
Councilmember Shin,
Yes.
Councilmember Holt.
Yes.
Motion passes. Ordinance 1073 is adopted. We'll move on to Ordinance 1074. The third reading of Ordinance 1074, amending the Maumelle zoning map. Madam City Clerk, if you could please read that by title only.
Be it enacted by the City Council of the City of Maumelle, County of Pulaski, State of Arkansas, an ordinance to be entitled Ordinance Number 1074, an ordinance amending the Maumelle zoning map and for other purposes.
This is the zoning ordinance that accompanies the land use map amendment that we just discussed. Is there any discussion on this ordinance?
Motion to approve ordinance 1074.
We've got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Madam City Clerk, roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Mosley,
No, ma'am.
Councilmember Mazzoni,
Yes.
Councilmember Gardner,
Yes.
Councilmember Williams, Councilmember Tierney,
Yes.
Councilmember Shin,
Yes.
Councilmember Holt.
Yes.
Motion passes. Ordinance 1075 is adopted. Pardon me. Next order of business is the third reading of Ordinance 1075, amendment to the City Code. Madam City Clerk, if you could please read that by title only.
Be it enacted by the City Council of the City of Maumelle, County of Pulaski, State of Arkansas, an ordinance to be entitled Ordinance Number 1075, an ordinance amending Section 94-101 of the Maumelle City Code to require site plan review for building permits in commercial zoning districts and for other purposes.
All right, I was in a different mode, so if you hit your button during the reading, I didn't see it. Is there any discussion on Ordinance 1075? If not, I'd entertain a motion to adopt.
So moved. Second.
Motion and second to adopt Ordinance 1075. Madam City Clerk, roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Mosley,
Yes.
Councilmember Mazzoni,
Yes.
Councilmember Gardner,
Yes.
Councilmember Williams, Councilmember Tierney,
Yes.
Councilmember Shin,
Yes.
Councilmember Holt.
Yes.
Motion passes. Ordinance 1075 is now adopted. With that, we'll move on to new business. The first item of new business is the first reading of Ordinance 1078, amending Chapter 10 of the Maumelle City Code. Madam City Clerk, if you could please read that by title only.
Be it enacted an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Maumelle, County of Pulaski, State of Arkansas, an ordinance to be entitled Ordinance Number 1078, an ordinance amending Chapter 10 of the Maumelle City Code to revise the fines and fees assessed for licensings and violations, assessed a fine for a failure to maintain control that results in injury and for other purposes.
Thank you very much. This is an ordinance sponsored by Councilmember Holt, so I will pass the floor over to him. Councilmember Holt.
Appreciate that, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, I've tried to approach the ongoing discussion regarding pets simply by updating the city code, which has not been updated since 2014. All references to any breed has been left out so that we place the responsibility solely on the shoulders of the owners, no matter what kind of breed of dog they have. It matters not. We do recommend, what we have recommended is a suggestion that all pets be spayed and neutered for obvious reasons, and it's mentioned in the code, so I won't go into it at this point. Additional recommendation has been made that owners will exercise control of their pets, and there are penalties for not doing so. I was glad to take a copy of this ordinance to the animal shelter and spoke with the supervisor there. He was my first concern because the burden of initiating all of the controls are on their shoulders. I discovered, however, while I was there, that I am not under code. I have had my dog vaccinated, but I do not have a city badge, and I have not been paying the city every year. I didn't know that I had to. So it's a lack of information on the behalf of the city to make certain that the information gets out. Here it is, so I will be paying that fee this month because that's when my my pet is due for his shot, and I will have him microchipped, as we have also said. So I was caught off guard on that one, but I will pay it. We must have a better flow of information so that residents will comply with the code. I welcome all amendments or any word changes that will make for a better ordinance. So with that, I hope for a good response, and I thank you for your time, and I yield the floor.
Thank you, sir. Is there any additional discussion on Ordinance 10-7? Councilmember Mosley?
Well, I waited to let everybody else have a chance. Mr. Holt, the only thing I have a problem with is item D, about an annual license fee for all animals that are spayed and neutered and all that. It's $5. I'm wondering if that is more trouble for the city to keep up with than the price is worth. I mean, once they're licensed, does that not take care of it? I'm not sure why we need an annual fee like a business license or something like that.
Yes, Chris Davis showed me every month they mail out notices to everyone who is due to have their pet updated that month. And he said they mail out 300 or 400 of these every single month. Yeah. So the people are informed. Provided this were to pass, hope we will, they also have a document that is mailed out to new residents. And I was going to suggest in the event that we were to pass, that with the help of the city attorney, some new wording could be put in here, and a copy of the updated ordinance would go along with this, so new people, residents, would know what to expect and care for their dog, as well as people who do not know, like myself, didn't know, that will get the notice every month and would include it in this. So that would include many, many people throughout the city. And I do agree that it needs to be, it's a simple way to have it sent out.
Yeah, well, like I said, it just seems like a lot of work for city employees. It's not like it's a revenue-making item, probably.
Just to address that, we do already have that $5 fee, so that's not, that part's not a change.
It looked like it was added here.
Well, it was added here because I believe before the mayor just set, or his designee set the fee, and so we do require a license now, and that's just what they've kept the fee at if your pet is spayed and neutered. What we talked about is just that in raising it for animals that don't have a microchip, you're encouraging people to get that microchip, which makes it a lot easier when animals come in and they are found, and to go ahead and get a hold of the owner and get them back at home instead of hanging out at the shelter for 2 or 3 days because they can't identify them. Just another thing to mention, and this does only address one small part of our fee schedule. I was in court with some animal control issues last week, and have been fairly frequently recently. And the judge mentioned that she thought our fines were very low. So it's probably time to update this, not necessarily in this ordinance, but just as an aside, it's probably time to update all of our fine schedule for our animal control violations.
Thank you. Councilmember Williams?
I totally agree. It's time to address these fines and fees. But my question is, Madam City Attorney, this is just an amendment to the other ordinance. There are things in that ordinance that stays the same. So what I didn't see is the exception for a dog that's protecting its owner and things like that. Does that stay in the ordinance? Is this just fines and fees, or does...
So all of the provisions regarding a vicious or dangerous animal and that designation, those would still remain
So
as far as
even,
an animal
police
that's.
dogs, things like that, that stays in the ordinance?
Correct, that's all still there. These are the only sections that are being changed. It does just, it only addresses a fine, that extra fine for when there's an injury and the animal is at large. So if your animal's in its own backyard protecting you, or in your home protecting you, then that wouldn't apply because your animal's not at large anyway.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Councilmember Gardner?
Thank you, Mayor. As I was going through this, first of all, Councilmember Holt, thank you for bringing this forward. We need to update this, and so I appreciate you taking the initiative to do that. I think this question is for the city attorney, so I'll direct that your way, ma'am. When I was looking through the section where it talks about adding the new fees, which is on page 4, the registration fees, I was struggling to find in our code where our current fees were codified.
They are not.
They are not, which led me to the section of code directly before all of these changes that we're making, section 1082, relating to fees. And you mentioned this a second ago. It says fees relative to the regulation of animals in the city will be set by the mayor. That seems pretty straightforward and blunt to me. I agree that we're the legislative body and we can make changes to this, but the way I read that, and please explain this if I'm reading it incorrectly, but it says fees relative to the regulation of animals in the city will be set by the mayor. So how can we change this? How can we update this if it conflicts directly with our code?
Yeah, I think we probably would need to make an amendment to go ahead and include that as well. If, I think we could consider fees relative to the regulation of animals in the city will be set by the mayor, if not set by the council via the code, if not included in the code. So we probably would need to include that.
So should we table it and bring it back at the next meeting with those changes, or what would be the recommended course of action?
I mean, you can move to add an amendment to 10-82, and I'll bring it back next time, and we can start on third reading again, or we could go ahead and do first. Or we could go ahead and, once you make that motion, we could actually do it as amended first reading tonight.
Okay, I'll make a motion to amend section 1082 and add set by the mayor or the city council. I think that's appropriate.
Second.
Or the city council by
Or the
ordinance.
city council, yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Mr. Holt, are you okay with that? I just want to make sure we're not doing anything that conflicts.
As I said, we're, newbies on this, and we really collectively need everybody's ideas and input, so I appreciate that. Thank you for
Well, I've
doing
got some
that.
other questions, but I had a list of questions, and then I was like, wait a minute, where are the fees even discussed? And that led me to this,
Right.
which conflicted, so, okay. I do have some more questions, but we can go ahead and vote on that motion.
Is there any discussion on the motion to add the language as suggested by?
Mr. Mayor, I was going to add just one last thing, and I wasn't going to bring it up. We're hoping, or was going to make a recommendation at a later time, that hopefully with the beginning of the 2023 budget, that the animal control shelter be added at least one employee. They only have 3, and at this point, the 3 officers make $11.75 an hour, and they desperately, in conjunction with what Councilmember Mosley said, it is a lot of work, and they do need help. They are understaffed, and we are expecting a tremendous amount of effort on the part of the people who run that, and my heart goes out to them. So I'm looking forward to hopefully the council to see to it that they are updated as well, not just the code, but the people who must serve it. And that will be, at some point, I've discussed it with our city attorney, and we hope that we will come along with that.
Thank you. Any other discussion on the motion to add the provision that the city council can set the fees by ordinance? All right, all those in favor of the amendment say yes.
Yes.
All opposed say no. Motion passes. Any other discussion on ordinance 1078? Councilmember Mosley?
Yeah, as far as what you were saying, yeah, I really do think we ought to try to find some way to cut out a lot of time, and that annual license fee for animals, to me, for the amount of money that we make, is not worth doing. There's got to be, how many thousands of animals do we have in this city that are supposed to be licensed?
The goal behind that is to make sure that they're all being vaccinated, because that, each year when they are licensed, they provide proof of their rabies vaccination, which we also require. So I think it's more from an aspect, it's not a moneymaker, obviously, but it is to keep up with, so they can tell, when they send that notice that the animal's passed away, they can, call and say, I'm sorry that animal died, or, whatever, but also to kind of motivate people to go ahead and get that vaccination so they can provide proof for their licensure.
Okay. I'll just make a motion that we go ahead and strike that $5 fee. I'll leave that other sentence there, but I'd make a motion that we strike that first sentence in Part D.
There's a motion on the floor to strike the first sentence in subsection D on page 4 of ordinance 1078. Do I hear a second on that motion? Last and final. Motion fails for lack of a second. Councilmember Gardner?
And Councilmember Mosley, kind of back to that, I've never actually registered at Animal Services. The vets in the town will do that. So the vet is serving as the registrar for the city. Is that correct? And then they pass along that fee, right?
Right. There are two. The vet, I know, like Boulevard,
Right.
and then the Maumelle Animal Clinic. They both do that.
Right.
Now, I go to a vet a little farther away, so we have to do it at the.
Sure.
At
So I
Maumelle
just wanted
Animal
to,
Services,
I wanted to
but-
mention that because it's not necessarily work the city's having to do, because a lot of those that are taking them to the vet for vaccinations annually, I just have them throw on the city fee and they remit it back to the city for me. So just wanted to mention that. A couple of questions, I guess, Councilmember Holt, did you come up with the numbers that we're talking about changing? Were those suggestions that you came up with? Did you consult with anybody on those?
I have not done that at this point, no.
Okay. That was a couple of my questions. The changes on page 1, I think those are fine. I mean, we're doubling them. I think on page 2, I had a question for the city attorney. When it comes to dog or cat at large with injury, how do we prosecute that, or as a city? Whose word are we taking that
So they would
my
get.
dog got loose and injured a person, but they didn't go to the doctor for it? So how do we defend that or prosecute it as a city?
So typically, Maumelle Animal Services would come out to investigate any allegations of that there was an animal at large and there was an injury. Also, if someone goes to an urgent care clinic here in the city and they say, how did you get hurt? And they say it was a dog bite, they report it. They all do that. So we get those reports, and then, investigation ensues from there.
Will that be under professional treatment, correct? If they went to
That would be
urgent care?
professional treatment, true. If they, so if the animal services officer comes out and sees that a person has, a shallow bite, but they don't want to get any kind of medical treatment for it, then they would note that.
Okay.
Or if an animal
Would a
has
scratch be an injury? I mean, I guess what I'm wondering is, if my dog goes out and jumps on someone and then they later claim that they were scratched, how do we prosecute that as a city? Or are we just creating
we would take pictures and testimony.
and then it's up to, okay,
I mean, that's how we prosecute really anything. I mean,
Right.
we take pictures and we take witness testimony, and the judge makes the decision.
Okay.
Based on what kind of evidence we can.
I mean, my kids have
gather
accidents
together.
a lot and fall, and so if they're scraped and then a dog happens to jump on them and I wanted to say that dog caused the injury, I guess that's what I'm getting at. I just
Well,
wonder.
I mean, you still have to have proof beyond a reasonable doubt, but, you know, there could possibly be a citation issued for that, depending on how reliable the witness
Yeah,
appears to be.
I just was worried that it's putting us in a difficult position to have to prove something. I'm all for
I mean, there's
finding
always
some common ground.
prosecutorial discretion, so whoever's
Yeah.
sitting in this
Okay.
seat can look at the case and can look at the citation and the summons.
So it's not an
and-
automatic.
And the
Okay.
attachments that go with it, and even after they, when they appear in court, if they talk to them about it and they don't believe that that's what happened, they can dismiss it.
Okay.
Or they can go forward with the trial, whichever they decide.
Okay. I want to jump to page 4. We were there with Councilmember Mosley mentioned Section D earlier. Councilmember Holt, were there any other cities that you looked at to see what they charged for their fees?
No,
Okay.
I'm embarrassed that I didn't, but I should
Okay.
have, that's true.
Okay. One of the things that is common is that there is a spayed-neuter animal fee. And generally that was, from what I found, it was generally $5. I looked at 7 different cities all around central Arkansas.
Right.
And it was anywhere from 5 to 10. So we're right there in the middle of all of that. And then on the animals that are intact, they're not spayed or neutered, the highest fee was $30. There was 3 that were $30, a couple were $20, one was $15, and the city of Bryant doesn't care. They're $5 across the board to register. So what I'm concerned about is that we're going to send people away and cause them not to come in and register their animal. $250 annually, that's steep. And I mean, I just think of my situation. I mean, that's for some people that's $20 a month, and a fee that you're paying to keep a dog or an animal, I guess, as well, right? Or I mean, a cat. So that's a steep fee, and the highest in the area that I found was $30.
Right. Chris Davis was concerned about that as well, and we talked with the city attorney on the phone at that point. So that's amendable. Whatever the city decides. I think the main purpose is we want to make sure that someone doesn't develop or have a breeding facility in their home or somewhere, because it states in here that it has to be inspected by the city animal shelter. So,
and wasn't there a separate section for breeding? I believe there's a whole separate section of code for that. Yeah, there's
a section for kennels.
There's a completely different section for kennels and breeding that your ordinance doesn't touch, Mr. Holt, so that would be.
I don't think kennels is the same as breeding. Let me look and see.
I thought there was a breeder's license.
You're right, exactly. Yeah, so this wouldn't even affect that. But $250 to register a dog or a cat, that just seems really steep. And personally, I wouldn't feel comfortable with anything more than 30 if we're going to go that split direction. What is it? What is it now? 5 for spayed, neutered, and what is the other one?
30 is coming from the floor.
So it costs $30 currently. Okay, so that's just 5 and 30 would be in line with what we currently do. Yeah, I'm not comfortable with
I'm not
going
finding the section on breeding. Tell me where that is. I know we have one for kennels, and I know we have one for pet shops.
When I was reading the cases, there was at least 2 that were for breeding without a license, but I don't know where it is in the code.
Okay. I'm not saying it's not there.
Well, and I may be confusing, because I was reading multiple cities, and it may have been another city that talked about it, because there was a provision for that, and you had until a certain number of weeks as a puppy or a kitten to have them registered or something. So I may be confusing that as well.
That's 6 months old. I think I read that.
That is 6 months old. They don't have to be registered until that time.
While we're looking that up, Councilmember Mazzoni?
Yeah, I kind of like having a healthy fee for at least male that are intact, because that's your problems. I mean, nature is nature. That's why a lot of places you can't even have a dog. When I was growing up, we couldn't have a dog in our city unless it was a male dog, unless it was fixed, because, well, if they get out, that's where you're gonna have problems. So, as far as females, I don't know if you would have any type of aggressive with there, so would it be just for male dogs to have it? Because the intent is to keep less, is to get at-large animals down, especially at-large animals that could be dangerous. And I think that'll take out a bulk of those animals right there.
I will say also, when people have litters of unwanted puppies, that also creates an additional burden because a lot of times they're gonna end up at Maumelle Animal Services. So when you say, yes, $250 is a lot, taking care of 7 or 8 puppies and having to get foster homes for them to get them all, that's also a big expense to the city and to the taxpayers. And if you're gonna have an animal that you don't wanna have spayed or neutered, you need to share in your rightful portion of that expense and not expect the city to do that when it's time, that you can't get rid of them, or they have, puppies with a dog that you didn't intend for them to have puppies with, and, those kinds of things happen. So, I don't think it's unfair in any way. Animals that are not sterilized create a number of problems, from being at large to then unwanted litters that have to be cared for. And I think owners should be responsible for that.
Madam City Attorney, Section 1089, subsection A, talks about how many animals you can keep, and it refers to 4 dogs or cats over the age of 8 weeks. And then below that it says it shall not apply to animal hospitals or veterinarians. It says this provision shall not apply to owners of dogs, cats, common cage birds who are breeders of such and hold a permit from the city for breeding or kennel operation. So it sounds like we have a code allows for a breeding if they have a home-based business permit. I could probably tell you the number of home-based business permits we have in the city for breeders.
Yeah,
So,
I'm sure you're right. I see that one sentence, but I don't see too much about how that's supposed to apply to, what.
I think it's just
requirements
we just have some inconsistencies in the code, or it just needs to be clarified in some areas. But I'm still going back to that 250. I have a problem with that. I think that's really high, especially when the highest in the area is $30. And that's about the bulk of my questions. But I agree that we should definitely look at our fine structure. But $250 to register a dog or a cat seems high. Annually.
Once maybe, but every year.
And then,
If you got more than one dog.
Yeah.
Then,
And then I did have, Mr. Davis isn't here tonight, but I was curious if it is an intact pet, then we are telling Animal Services they have to go out and inspect the house and the fence and all of that. So I'm wondering what kind of burden this is going to put on them. I don't know how many intact pets that we have come through the city as registering, but that's going to be a burden that we placed on them to go out and do that. So that'll be added workload. I don't know if their current staffing can handle that, or if we're needing to add an employee because we have just added this additional burden. So I have some questions and concerns over that. But it's good that we're talking about this so that we can flesh these out.
Right. Would you entertain a motion for an alternate fee?
I think 30 is appropriate. If I were going to make a motion, it would be for the 30 number.
That's $5 more than it is if your animal is not spayed or neutered. And if we're gonna do $25 for microchip.
Oh yeah, I've got
No
that highlighted.
microchip.
I've got some questions about that too, but.
Councilmember Mosley?
Yeah, I kind of agree on that 250. When I first read that, I was thinking more of the dangerous dogs, the kind that were involved in that attack. Were those dogs neutered?
No,
They were not neutered.
I don't believe so. One was female. I don't think either one of them were, but I'm not absolutely positive about
But,
that.
I think that $250 would be a good deterrent as far as dangerous dogs, if we could put that in there. pit bulls and whatever we, whatever was lifted in the lifting of the ban. But otherwise, I'd agree with Mr. Gardner, 30 is probably more appropriate or something like that.
Thank you. Councilmember Shin?
Well, surprisingly, I disagree with both of you. Having had a recent encounter with a intact dog, not only did we find it far from its home, it followed us to the point that when we stopped, it got in the car with us. And I had a house guest for the day. He was a long way from home, and it was all because of a female that was almost a mile from his house. I do think 250 is too high, but I'm not sure 30 is enough.
30 is what it is right now.
I know,
So you're
I'm
doing
just
nothing
saying,
to
I'm
solve the
saying, I
problem.
don't think that's enough.
Zero.
So,
And the reason I said 30, it's not codified, so I didn't know what the
Yeah.
rate was.
I mean, I think on a intact male dog, or maybe even a male cat for that matter, that maybe it ought to be $50, personal opinion. Because those are the ones that are gonna cause your litters. They're the ones who are gonna go look to cause litters. And so, just personal opinion.
Councilmember Tierney?
Yeah, it's interesting that Mr. Shin made mention about how he felt it should be around $50, because that's exactly what I was about to suggest. Because here we're in an instance whereas the city attorney has mentioned $30 is only $5 more than what it is if you one way, but so there's no incentive to have them spayed or neutered. But at the same time, I'll agree that $250 annual fee is way too high, and so I'd like to make a motion that we change that to $50.
Second.
I've got a motion and second to amend ordinance 1078. Subsection E on page 4, from the last sentence that says the annual intact pet license fee shall be $50 is the motion. Is there any discussion on that motion? Councilmember Shin? I'm not sure if your comments were on this motion or something more general. Okay. Councilmember Mazzoni?
I don't think that's gonna be enough to really dissuade anyone currently, so we're gonna be back to square one. Do we have any information on the amount of what bites have occurred in the past few years? How many, is that something we track, whether they're intact or not? I would bet that's high, and I just don't think, 250 may be too high, but I don't think $50 is gonna dissuade anyone, and we're gonna be back here in 6 months again. I don't think you're gonna have the problem with spayed and neutered animals than you have.
Seriously. What do you think is a good amount?
How about $100?
Mitch, what, 75? Oh.
We have the crowd with me, so I'm not saying it fast. I'll motion to make it $100.
Well, we already have a motion and a second on making it $50.
Sounds like we're bartering down to 75.
It does, we can, if the mover and the second wish to withdraw that motion and second, we can move on.
Well, if that's the type of thing where everybody's wanting to make an adjustment, I'll make, can I adjust my motion to 75? Withdraw my motion and make another motion to 75? As a form of compromise?
Madam City Attorney?
Let's just withdraw it and start again to make it cleaner.
Yeah, let me withdraw my motion for $50
And who was it, who was the second on that motion?
I was. I'll withdraw.
Okay, so the motion to amend 1078, that fee on the bottom page 4 from 250 to 50 is withdrawn.
and make a motion to make it to 75.
And now I've got a motion to make the same amendment for $75. Do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
I've got a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on that motion? Does everyone understand the motion? It's to amend ordinance 1078, page 4, subsection E, last sentence. It says the annual intact pet license fee shall be $250. That will be amended to $75. Any additional discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the amendment say yes.
Yes.
All opposed, no.
I'm gonna say no.
No.
Can we get a roll call vote, Madam City Clerk?
Absolutely. Councilmember Holt. Roll call vote.
We're amending it to $75, is that correct, Mr.
Yes,
Mayor?
sir.
Yes.
Shin,
No.
Tierney,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Gardner,
Yes.
Mazzoni,
No.
Mosley.
I'm a yes, anything to get it down.
All right, motion passes. We have that second amendment passed now. What I'm going to go ahead and do is ask the city clerk to go ahead and read ordinance 1078 as amended by the two motions passed by the city council.
I do have a this probably won't lead to a change, but I have a question on something else.
Not taking a chance, go.
There we go.
All right, going up one line to section D, what do we know about other cities having different registration fees for microchipped animals versus non-microchipped animals? Where did we pull that from? Did it just,
I don't know, I did not research what other cities
Okay.
did. I think it makes common sense. I don't care what any other city does. I mean,
Yeah,
if you look
yeah.
at the expense of trying to identify an animal and house an animal while you figure out who it belongs to, I think it's reasonable to expect, and I think that that's an extra expense. And I also think it's a good motivator for people
Sure.
to go ahead and get their animal
Sure.
microchipped if they have thought, oh, I mean to do that, but they just have put it off, but they're gonna have to pay an extra $20, they'll go ahead and get it done.
okay, and I don't have an issue with that. I guess my question, I'm kind of going back to the process again of how we do things. I don't like passing laws that we don't have a plan for how we're going to do it. And so how are we going to determine whether my dog that's been registered here for 4 or 5 years now has a chip?
The same way you provide proof that your dog's been vaccinated, you have a document from your vet, or you can bring your dog in and they'll read it.
So we're gonna change the process with the veterinary clinics that they have to, because I never come into animal services, so I'm gonna have to tell the vet that they're chipped, let them scan it, and then they're going to submit something to the city saying that my dog is chipped?
The vet can either confirm that your dog
Okay.
has a chip, or you can provide proof to the
Okay,
city.
I'm just thinking through how we're gonna do it, because if we're gonna put something in law, I wanna make sure that we have a way of collecting that information, so. And are any animals any of these changes, will any of these animals be grandfathered, or is somebody gonna get a bill now for their $75 intact dog or their $25 non-chipped dog? Are these animals that are currently in the city gonna be grandfathered in?
So to get their next license, they'll pay the new fee.
So they will not be grandfathered in?
Well, it'll be after the effective date of the ordinance. So once the ordinance is read for the third time, and the 60 days after that, if you need to register your dog, you'll pay whatever fee relates to them at that time.
So that's a no then, they won't be grandfathered?
There's no grandfathering
Okay.
provision.
All right. Thank you, ma'am, I'm done.
Councilmember Holt?
Well, I think what we're trying to do in this is that it's been so long since the folks have been encouraged to do anything. It's been 8 years since it's been updated, so there is a certain amount of shock here, and if we can get, it's a matter of what should be. There's no ideal utopia here, but if we sort of push our luck, we can always, later on, if it just isn't going to work and we get so much flack, as a council, we need to relocate it and redraw it. But I don't think that so far we're that far out of bounds. I'm very pleased with the $75 adjustment, and so anyway, I just thought it would be. That's why we came from where we came from. We've got to start with something, and it is shock to some people. So we'll do our best to work with them any way we can.
Thank you. Councilmember Shin?
It's kind of a minor thing, but on the very first thing, the dog or cat at large. Having had both, it's a lot easier to contain a dog than a cat. You know, a dog can go out the pet door, but it's not going over the 6-foot fence. If the cat gets out through the pet door, it's going over the 6-foot fence. All of our animals have been fixed, but it still, every now and then, would get over the fence. And it didn't cause any problems, but it still was at large. And that just seems like a high price for a fixed cat versus a dog. Because dog fixed or not, it can still fight. And of course, I guess cats can too, but I don't know. I don't know if it needs to be different, but it's just something that I'm hearing noises from.
Councilmember Mosley?
Yeah, about 4 years ago, for whatever reason, we were talking about all this, and the dogs and cats both have to be on a leash if they're out. And at the time, I came very close to making a motion that we exclude cats, because cats usually don't cause that much problem, and they do. There's a lot of cats roaming around. I guess probably the general thing is nobody grabs them from the dog pound unless they're causing trouble. So I don't know what to do about that, but I kind
I'd like to address the cat remark, okay? Because I get to deal with
Madam
all
City
these.
Attorney?
I'm sorry. I get to deal with all these things when people make each other upset with their at-large animals, and then they get citations and they come into court. And I had a situation with a cat that would not, the people would not keep it in the house for whatever reason and let it roam, and it persistently drove the neighbor crazy. It destroyed their window screens. I ended up asking for restitution in hundreds of dollars because it had torn up their window screens. It didn't like the neighbor's cat, so it would come up to the window and annoy the neighbor's cat all day long, and I had it throwing complete fits. I mean, I get that there is sort of a tradition of people who like to keep their cats outside and let them just roam around the neighborhoods, but that's not permitted in our code, and they do create problems. So if you're gonna have a cat, it's in the cat's best interest for you to keep it in the house contained or in some other structure in your yard contained. We had another situation where the cat got into the neighbor's yard and was in a fight with the neighbor's cat, which was out there with the person. Like they just went out with their own little pet and were keeping track of it and everything. And this neighbor's cat comes over and starts attacking it in front of the child, and they're upset. I mean, it sounds ridiculous, but it does create problems.
Okay, I won't make that motion tonight.
I have had, when I was city attorney, cats that would like sleep on people's cars and leave like footprints all over it, and we couldn't do anything. I mean, so it happens more. It happens more than you think. It's still a silly concept, except for when the cat is a nuisance, and some of them are.
Okay.
Anyways. Any additional discussion on ordinance 1078? Madam City Clerk, could you please read the title only for ordinance 1078 as amended?
Be it enacted an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Maumelle, County of Pulaski, State of Arkansas, an ordinance to be entitled Ordinance Number 1078, an ordinance amending Chapter 10 of the Maumelle City Code to revise the fines and fees assessed for licensing and violations assessed, a fine for failure to maintain control that results in injury, and for other purposes as amended.
Thank you very much. All right, that'll be on second reading at the next city council meeting. Next item is the reading of resolution 2022-45 authorizing the purchase of property. Madam City Clerk, if you could please read that by title only.
A resolution of the City Council of the City of Maumelle, County of Pulaski, State of Arkansas, a resolution to be entitled Resolution Number 2022-45, a resolution authorizing the purchase of property to facilitate construction of the White Oak Crossing Roundabout, namely a tract of land being located in the northeast section in Pulaski County, Arkansas, and for other purposes.
All right, this is the second parcel needed for the White Oak Crossing roundabout. We have got one other right-of-way that we're looking for. We're not asking for any more money. It's the same thing as last time, but in order to purchase that rights-of-way, that right-of-way, we need city council approval.
Motion to adopt resolution 2022-45.
Second.
I've got a motion second to adopt resolution 2022-45. Councilmember Mosley.
Yes, sir. This one's quite a bit less than the last one.
Yes, sir.
Is this just like a sliver of property that wouldn't be developable or something like that?
It is just scraping the edge of an existing property. So the first property that we got, the roundabout is situated like directly on that.
Okay.
Effectively. This is just, we just need the right of way from the edge of one of their property.
All right, thank you, sir.
Mm-hmm. Any additional discussion on resolution 2022-45? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say yes.
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 All opposed, no. Motion carries. Resolution 2022-45 is adopted. Next order of business is resolution 2022-44, approving a preliminary development plan. Madam City Clerk, if you could please read that by title only.
A resolution of the City Council of the City of Maumelle, County of Pulaski, State of Arkansas, a resolution to be entitled Resolution Number 2022-44, approving a preliminary development plan for Stone Canyon Addition.
Thank you very much. Also, Mr. Grummer advised that he did have some more attachments that he could show up on the screen if the council was interested in that. And again, this is for Stone Canyon. Councilmember Mosley?
Yeah, this is the actual development plan that shows all the lots and all that. Yeah, it's not in our packet. If you wouldn't mind showing us again what we're looking at, that'd be great.
Mr. Grummer, come on down, please. You're the next contestant.
And I apologize to the council members. There may have been some confusion as to what the attachments needed to be on the agenda, so let me just pull that up real quick. Hold on, it's not it's got me on multiple projection screen. Hold on.
Yeah, the document that was to be Exhibit A is not attached.
Yeah.
This is not the preliminary development plan.
No, it is not. And this thing is not carrying it. It's got me on multiple screens. Let me see if I can fix this.
Usually if you do a search for display, you can swap it. While we're waiting, is there any council member comments? Councilmember Mosley?
Well, I don't want to distract Mr. Germer, but I'll wait until he gets it up. He's got the answers for all my questions, I know.
Councilmember Tierney?
Hey, on another matter, when Ms. Watkins was talking earlier about the stopping of construction, I was kind of curious if you had any information you could provide on that.
Sure, we could talk about that.
Okay, well, I see he's up now, so we'll wait till later.
Okay. So I'll roll through these really quick. We had 9 attachments, 8 were exhibits, and 1 was the actual letter from Planning Commission. Of course, the development plan had contingencies on meeting all staff comments that were notated in the staff report with the Planning Commission. It also had a contingency on annexation of all lands into the city of Maumelle. As some of you may be aware of this development, some of it was within the city of Maumelle and some of it was within the county. The developer is seeking entitlements on this, and part of that entitlement is approval of the zoning and land use, which you've already approved, and the other one is the development plan. If the development plan is approved, then they're going to move forward with annexation. So the development plan itself that you're approving is contingent upon that annexation. So really, if the annexation does not occur, then the development plan is null and void. So that's what that contingency is for. And then contingency on all lands being zoned PRD and land use of SUR, which you've already approved in the previous approvals. So I apologize, it's not displaying on my computer, so I've got to read it up here. The next one was the overall concept plan. One of the things that we tried to emphasize on this PRD is a little bit more information that you are approving as a city council so that it carries forward in the case if the developer ever does sell the development, which it can happen. So with this is the overall concept plan that kind of shows the overall development. It also shows the intent of bike trails and the intent of the landscaping around the detention. So pretty much just a concept of what they're trying to achieve. Now, the next 3 documents are the development plan. The development plan, because this is 406 units being applied for overall within 6 phases, we had it on 3 separate documents. So this is the first document. It provides your phases 1, 2, and 3. The first phase is against Highway 365 and includes mostly single family detached. There are some, the smaller lots that are towards the lower center are individual lots, but those are meant for the townhomes that were in question or that are part of the development. The second page, which provides other phases, I think phase 4 through 6, or maybe 5 through 6, 3 and 4 are towards on the next document. This includes the bike trail, so this property did include a old quarry in the center of it, which they're wanting to repurpose for public use as bike trails. That's why a large part of the land, over 28%, is being provided as green space. And then around the border of that, you'll see the smaller lots, and those are meant for townhomes backing up to this green space, which you'll see if you go to Northwest Arkansas. Sometimes you see a little bit more townhome style developments around those public areas, which creates kind of a buffer to the single family residential around it. And then the third document is the other phases. Of course, this is single family more towards the old Maumelle Road, which is on the eastern boundary. If you recall, when the Bradleys annexed this property in, the city received 100% of Old Maumelle Road bordering this property, so that is the city of Maumelle. Part of the development and part of the approval from Planning Commission is that a half-road improvement will be required when this phase gets built out, which is, I believe, phase 3 or 4, one of those up there. And once they get to that point and start doing the engineering, part of the discussion was the impacts around it and whether there's a better way of preparing for future development of Old Maumelle Road and improvements. And the Planning Commission determined that we could make those conversations later on down the line when you get closer to that phase. So they can always come back and ask for a variance if that's the purpose. I doubt it, but either way, they're required to do a half-road improvement with the development. And then Exhibit A5, that was one of the things that you find with most developments, PUDs around the country and everywhere, is a more detailed description of the intent of the development as well as just the overall purpose of it. The city of Maumelle has never really done that for PRDs within the city, so what I was asking for is a little bit more than what has typically been provided. But it does add in some additional information that I think was important for the city council and planning commission to be aware of. And some of that is the verbiage in this. The housing units will be clustered to create more green spaces, 28% approximately acres. And then some of the important things, all detached and attached homes are to be built with 100% quality materials as defined by Maumelle City Code. The homes are to utilize a mix of styles and materials to create a diversified aesthetic within the development. So the purpose there is trying to get some language stating that they're not planning on a homogeneous style housing development where every house looks like a cookie cutter same but ultimately some diversity in there to create a better aesthetic for the neighborhood. So they're talking about quality here of a development. And then they've got square foot minimums of 1,200 square foot. I wanted that to be wanted them to state that based on what the intent of the development. And that's one of the things that was mentioned previously, was having different housing sizes and styles to meet all demographics, including workforce within the city of Maumelle. And then the project amenities, they speak of the trails and the construction of the trails, and they also say when the trails will be built, which is completed before the building permits are issued for phase 3. So they're telling us specifically from planning and permitting standpoint when we're supposed to have that built out. So, and then buffering of trees against Old Maumelle Road as well as against the railroad right-of-way, telling us how much tree buffer needs to protect adjacent properties, as well as buffering this development from the railroad, which, if you know, most developments that happen around a railroad typically are not as favorable when it comes to housing values and whatnot. So that's one of the things that is an opportunity here with this development. It helps capture some of what the potential demographic can be. And then you've got some townhome. This is more of just a schematic of what a townhome looks like, but they show 6 is the maximum you can have for townhomes, but the clusters that they're going to be doing, they show as 3 and 4 clustered together of townhome styles in those areas. And the percentages on those townhomes are stated in the development plan, which are on the quantitative data within the development plan, which states 407 lots, 150 of those are attached. It's 36.9%. The single-family detached is about 63% of the overall, which is 257 lots. And that concludes all the attachments. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for letting me provide that.
My pleasure. Thank you, sir. Councilmember Gardner.
Motion to adopt resolution 2022-44.
Second.
We've got a motion and a second. We still have some public comments. Councilmember comments. Councilmember Mosley.
Yeah, you answered a lot of questions there. Thank you. That was very helpful. Appreciate it. So on Old Maumelle Road, half of it will be is scheduled to be paid for at some point by the developer.
Just the portion that abuts this property, not the entire road.
Right.
Just the portion that
Just
abuts. They're
that
responsible, and it's a half road.
Half a road, okay. And you answered a lot of questions about the annexed land. I was really wondering how that was gonna work, doing a neighborhood with unannexed land and annexed land. And you're saying that we've got it contingent, they can't start building until it's all been annexed in, is that correct?
That's correct, and with that annexation, you'll set the zoning to PRD and SUR, which is a contingency requirement.
Okay. Yeah, and that'll be the first phase or the second phase or whatever, okay?
That's correct. So the first phase will be on Highway 365, so I believe it's the third phase where you'll start seeing development on Old Maumelle, so it'll be a few years out.
All right. What about the residents along Old Maumelle Road? Have they reached out and expressed support or whatever?
We had some that came to Planning Commission with questions. I provided my personal information. I never received any phone calls directly.
Okay, so nobody registered a yay or a nay then? Okay. That's all I've got. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We've got a motion second on the floor to adopt Resolution 2022-44. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
All opposed, no.
No.
Motion carries. Next order of business is the first reading of Ordinance 1079, amending Section 94-9 of the City Code. Madam City Clerk, if you could please read that by title only.
Be it enacted by the City Council of the City of Maumelle, County of Pulaski, State of Arkansas, an ordinance to be entitled Ordinance Number 1079, an ordinance amending Section 54-78 of the Maumelle City Code, and for other purposes.
All right, these are pretty basic changes, just designed to make consistent some of the different notice procedures that we have, because we have different processes that all have different notice requirements to the public, and so this is working on standardizing those a bit. If there's no further discussion, this will be on second reading at the next City Council meeting. Seeing none, we'll move on. Next item of business is the first reading of Ordinance 1080, amending a master street plan. Madam City Clerk, if you could please read that by title only.
Be it enacted by the City Council of the City of Maumelle, County of Pulaski, State of Arkansas, an ordinance to be entitled Ordinance Number 1080, amending the master street plan for the City of Maumelle, Arkansas.
All right, master street plan, with the big change being it upgrades the collector road to a minor arterial. They're focused on the area on east of I-40. Any discussion on Ordinance 1080? Seeing none, it'll be on second reading at the next City Council meeting. With that, we'll move on to the first reading of Ordinance 1081, amending Section 94-9 of the City Code. Madam City Clerk, if you could please read that by title only.
Be it enacted by the City Council of the City of Maumelle, County of Pulaski, State of Arkansas, an ordinance to be entitled Ordinance Number 1081, an ordinance amending Section 94-9 of the Maumelle City Code and for other purposes.
Again, pretty basic changes. The one that stood out to me most is the filing period being changed from 14 to 21 days, and then stating that the Director of Planning will set the date for the public hearing and not the City Clerk. Madam City Attorney?
Also, this just reconciles this procedure with the bylaws of the Planning Commission, which are already set on this time frame.
Thank you. Any discussion on Ordinance 1081? Seeing none, this will be on second reading at the next City Council meeting. We will move on to Resolution 2022-46, a resolution to certify the taxation rate for the tax year 2022. Madam City Clerk, if you could please read that by title only.
A resolution of the City Council of the City of Maumelle, Pulaski County, Arkansas, resolution number 2022-46, a resolution certifying to the Pulaski County, Arkansas County Clerk the rates of taxation to be levied by the City of Maumelle on taxable real and personal property within the City of Maumelle, Arkansas for the tax year 2021 and for other purposes.
All right, there are no tax increases here. This is just our annual requirement that we certify the tax rates and submit it to the county clerk. Madam City Attorney?
I think the 2021 in the title should have been amended to 2022, or no? Throughout the resolution, it says 2022.
That is correct. I'd entertain a motion to amend the title where it says tax year 2021 to 2022.
Second.
We've got a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say yes.
Yes.
All opposed say no. Does this constitute a material change requiring it to be read again?
It's just a resolution, so it doesn't require 3 readings anyway. So I think it would be fine. Just go ahead and read it again. Why not?
Madam City Clerk, if you could please
Sure.
read. Well, hang on just a second. Councilmember Gardner?
We need to do this.
Okay.
A resolution of the City Council of the City of Maumelle, Pulaski County, Arkansas, Resolution Number 2022-46, a resolution certifying to the Pulaski County, Arkansas County Clerk the rates of taxation to be levied by the City of Maumelle on taxable real and personal property within the City of Maumelle, Arkansas for the tax year 2022 and for other purposes.
Good job.
There we go. Thank you. Councilmember Gardner?
I was just gonna make sure there's no typos, because this is pretty important stuff. It's all correct.
Sweet.
The rates are correct.
Yes.
Okay, I'll make a motion to adopt Resolution 2022-46.
Second.
I've got a motion and second to adopt Resolution 2022-46. Any additional discussion on that? Seeing none, all those in favor, Councilmember Mosley?
Assume we don't have to put our sales tax in there. I didn't see that. Did I
It's
miss
just
that?
real and personal property taxes.
Okay, that's all. All right, thank you. I'm good.
All those in favor of adopting Resolution 2022-46, please say yes.
Yes.
All opposed, no. Motion carries. Next order of business is pickleball courts discussion. I mentioned at a prior city council meeting that we had some planners looking at a possible pickleball court concept plan. This is still very high level. This is not designed. This is the free version of their services, but it has had multiple site visits as well as discussions with city staff, Parks and Rec, as well as an assessment of some of the drainage and pathway needs in the area. And so what they did here, just as this is just broad concept, is it could be done as a whole, or it could be broke off into 2 different phases. The full preliminary costs of the full issue are right around $600,000, and that's for 7 courts. If you break it off into 2 phases, the first phase is the part delineated there at the sort of tucked away, and then the anyways, phase 1 is $320,000 at early preliminary estimate. Phase 2 would be $295,000. So there are efficiencies in that. Now these are, again, these numbers would be expected to be changed once you actually got out and did topos, and then went through a planning process. We haven't engaged the public yet in exactly what they're looking for. Really, this was at that early stage to be able to come to the city council and say, is this feasible? Is this feasible in this area? And what do we think the rough costs are at this early phase? So what I'd really like to do is just open the floor to discussion. I know pickleball is something that I have been asked to find and get some courts in town now for quite a while. We do have, the idea would be that we could use some ARPA funds for this. If we wanted, we think there may be some grants, but that's not overly optimistic. But I'll just open the floor for discussion. Councilmember Gardner?
So you're saying there's a little bit of a discount there, doing the full project versus phasing it out. I was a little surprised that it was only $600,000. I say only, it's still a lot of money, but I was surprised that it was that low. I expected more.
You could do it for less if we had flat ground that was just sitting there waiting to be developed. There's a lot of drainage issues that occur in this area. You'll see side paths that need to be amended, various elevations to make it ADA compliant, and so part of the portion is site work for those.
And I think this needs to go through the full process, like you mentioned, of having community members, pickleball players that participate in the process. My fear was that if we did phase one, those 3 courts would be taken up pretty regularly, and you'd have a lot of people fighting with pickleball paddles over court space. We don't want pickleball brawls. So I'm curious to see how this goes. I expected a bigger number for the full project, so to see it only be 600, that's an encouraging first step. But I look forward to seeing what the community feedback would be on it.
Councilmember Mosley?
The conceptual plan, are the neighboring buildings supposed to be like the community center and that sort of thing?
Yes. I'm sorry. So this is that building in the north. Let me make sure I'm streaming this out.
Yeah.
That building in the top right corner is the gymnasium at the community center.
Okay, so those 3 would be just, I guess, the way my directions look to be south of the community center, south of the gymnasium?
Yes.
And then the others would be more behind the community center?
Yes.
Okay.
So currently where phase 8 is, it's either an old basketball court or an old tennis court that's down there.
Okay.
You really can't see it. It's mostly covered with dirt and mud. This is an area that apparently was utilized at one point in time by the city and is just kind of dead space. The phase 2 should be noted that this is the area where the gravel parking lot is that is often used for charter school pickup. And drop off. We don't think it cuts that off. We think it just cuts off that gravel portion, and we think it'll actually be a little bit safer for those that actually drop their kids off or pick them up in the gravel. It is a blast because everyone is coming and going at the same time with kids running around. This would actually provide 2 different trails. It's a little bit longer walk, but the ingress and egress could cycle actually better and create less problems. Little bit longer walk. So I'm also interested in any thoughts about what this process could look like. If the council's even interested in going through that process, or if this is dead in the water right now, then let's not go through a big public process if people already know this is not something that y'all would support. Just thoughts generally about how to go about that. Councilmember Gardner?
I would certainly say move forward with a community process. I think it'll be very well received. And I'm assuming that you would think something along the lines of what we do for the tennis courts, have a fee-based, or would this be open to the public? Have you thought through that?
We've thought very lightly about it. The assumption has been that it would function pretty similar to the tennis courts, which is that somebody there needs to be a member of the community center, pay their fee. This is a little bit different, the dynamic, both being closer to the community center, which means it could be better managed by the current rec staff to a certain degree, but also the number of courts and people coming make it a little bit, with the 2 tennis courts, you kind of have to have a key to get in there, and there's a few people. But the way we're seeing pickleball courts being used in the region and elsewhere is they are hot in place. So we have to figure out and iron out some of those details. But it is, Philip with Parks and Rec has been at these meetings as we've been looking through this.
Would these be secured with a fence perimeter around the courts?
Correct, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That's a pretty busy place around 3 o'clock, so.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Yeah. Mazzoni's kids are out there, so.
I drop my kid off, I don't pick him up, so I don't know what it looks like at 3, but I know what it looks like at 7:50. So another thing is the public process can be it can be a multitude of different ways. One of the benefits of having a public process at the early stages of design, we have a concept, but this can be changed fairly quickly. If we do a public process while we have engaged the engineers and architects to do that, then it will not only be an information gathering as to whether the council and the city and the community want this to go forward, but it would also be a public hearing or public event where the engineers can hear from those that are active pickleball players, as well as those that have an interest in making sure that we do preserve a way for charter school drop-off and pickup to be involved. And so a early public hearing without someone on retainer to come in and sort of facilitate that process would be great at giving the council an indication as to how well it's received, but horrible at planning something. And so, but that doesn't prevent two public hearings. I'm just concerned about a public hearing in whenever, say, in a month, and then coming back a month to the council approves it, and then coming back and holding another public hearing a month later may have the result of people showing up to the first one and then not the second one. The opposite could be true. Councilmember Mosley.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to this at all. I'm kind of like Mr. Gardner here. I'm ready to, let's proceed ahead, see how the process goes. Sounds like something fun, something that people go, oh, gee, the city's doing something more for us. So I think it would create some excitement. Thank you.
Any additional comments on this? Okay, we'll work on an event. I've already been meeting with some folks and I'm going to butcher the name, but the Arkansas Pickleball Association promoters group that are not looking to sell us anything, but that they go into communities and they really help push and promote pickleball at the possibility or feasibility of having a pickleball event. We do have courts at the indoor courts. Those are not well received by many, but a big promotion where you can have pickleball day in Maumelle, and then at the same time you are informing people and getting feedback and that sort of stuff. So that's probably the route that we'll end up going. You'll hear more about that coming soon. So that concludes, Councilmember Mosley.
Yeah, just real quick, has Sherwood or anybody done this, gone down this trail before, or we?
I don't know if Sherwood had. They're popping up everywhere. Canis, there's one out on Canis that is hopping. That's very well used. In fact, their problem is that they need more courts, and that's one of the things you're seeing with pickleball. And one of the reasons there's value to 7 courts over just say 3 is once you get up to a certain amount of courts, you can start hosting the tournaments. And so that's when you end up both keeping Maumelle residents in Maumelle, but also bringing folks from outside of town in to compete in those events.
Sounds great. Thank you, sir.
Right, that concludes new business, mayor's comments. I didn't have anything. I did want to address the Crystal Hill Road. The city has not stopped that project from going forward. We are, we've had a couple issues. One of the issues that's taking time is there's a dispute between us and the contractors about various quantities that were used, and so that ended up with us not paying about, that issue remains. We haven't been convinced that they've used the amount of some materials that they're claiming they've used. They're showing us the tickets for it. We have Roy in the back who may have a better update on that, but that, as well as trying to get some alternative price options for that tail there at the end, and then reassessing how we're doing the landscaping in there. So that is what's going on. We haven't stopped their work. In fact, we've been twisting arms now for a month in order to get solid price estimates on how that would end up looking. I'm sure Roy is tired of hearing from me, and I'm sure they're tired of hearing from Roy, but apparently not enough to actually get us those price quotes. I think Roy thinks that they'll be back out on site later this week. So I'm holding him to it because I've now told people to it. But no, we haven't stopped that project. And they've been out doing non-major things. They've been working on fences, things along those lines. We have asked them to mow. We do not want to mow that median because we haven't inspected that median. Damages to the median then would become city liability, as well as, we don't know if they've put cinder blocks down there, and I don't want to run our mowers over it. They're supposed to be mowing it later this week also. I'm getting a head nod. Councilmember Mosley?
Yeah, let me make sure I understand this. The dispute is like over asphalt and that they're trying to set.
Gravel.
Gravel?
Gravel, sort of base.
Okay, they're saying we've used up all the quantity we need, so they're not willing to go ahead and purchase anymore without maybe asking us for more money? Is that the deal?
Well, so we've had, there's been a number of price adjustments and quantity adjustments. We realized early on in the project that the undercut needed actually on the elevated portion, more toward where the O'Reilly Senior facility will be going in, and over near the park on the river, needed substantially more undercutting than we thought, right? And so we thought we were taking the asphalt out, taking the base out, and then laying the gravel and rebuilding the base and the sub-base, but it turned out that the dirt underneath was wet and rotten. And so you're not gonna lay a base on top of that. And so it's just things like that where we agreed to more undercut in certain areas. We had some pretty major problems down at the low points where it flooded more frequently, very bad base, where that, you guys may have seen if you drove out there, those big holes that we had to really dig down deep and then wait for it to dry before we could put the base in. So we knew that there was more, that we're just contesting some of it and requiring them to prove to us where it went, right? Like, they've got the tickets, and I would never accuse them of being unethical, but it's not unheard of for someone to get a truck and pick up a ticket and then drive off somewhere else. We don't think that's happened. We're just saying you have to show us where you used this. You tell us where it went, because by our very conservative calculations, it isn't there. We haven't figured it out, at least unless Roy's been able to work with them in the last week to do it. So we put that aside, and we've been holding 2 pay apps from them because those were continuing to be in there, and we were contesting that amount. I think we finally agreed you pull those overages out, the overages above where we thought we were. You pull those out, and we'll get you paid on the $500,000 that was outstanding. We've paid them on that, and we're still arguing or debating or trying to figure out whether or not that amount of gravel and stuff was actually used.
Good. So the only paving that needs to be finished is from Counts Massey intersection with Counts Massey and Crystal Hill toward North Little Rock. That's the only thing remaining, because it looked like it was finished up to.
It is.
In fact, I drove on it.
The road itself is finished construction from Maumelle Boulevard down to Counts Massey, and all of the portion of Counts Massey up. We do have finishing work, the rights of way, the striping. We still have the bike path up from Park on the River to the boulevard. We were gonna have them pave that, but the cost of that goes up because they'd rather bring in the asphalt all at once as opposed to bringing out all those machines laying that path. So for efficiency, we're just holding off on that path until they come down. We're having to revamp or relook at the landscaping. The quote that we were given from the landscaper when we bid the project was, and I'm gonna, tell me if I'm too far off here, Roy. I want to say we anticipated it would be about $75,000 for the landscaping. I believe the quote's coming in now, just with price increases, closer to 200,000. Is that right? Close enough, yeah. So we're looking at the landscaping, and then we're afraid that if we redo that southern tail south of Counts Massey in toward the county, and we're afraid that if we tear that out, that we're gonna run into the same sub-base problems. So the engineers have been redesigning that to figure out how can, rather than tear out that base, which destabilizes it and then requires more fill, more cut, looking at how we can keep the existing pavement, stabilize it, widen it, do the necessary work in the areas that are weak, and then just come over and pave it. One of the things we're looking at then is pulling for that last portion, pulling that center median out and going with a side path in that portion, which should, for every single one of the residents that was down there, make them happy, because none of them liked the median except the one that had the turn in there. So it's similar to what we had to do with the City Hall parking lot, where we tore out that side and then realized that the base was so bad that it ate up all the money, and so we didn't tear out the front. We did a number of things, including some technical term that I don't remember, but it's laying a sheet down, reinforcing the current, milling down the edges, and then overlaying it there. So when we say we're waiting on the prices on that, we've been trying to get those prices, and it's a jigsaw puzzle as how you can put it together without having overruns on the project.
Okay. So, sorry that's turned into such a complex project. It's been wild. That's all I've got on that. Are we in council member comments?
Not yet.
Okay.
Council member comments? We are now. Yes, sir.
First, I wanted to commend you on a project that went very well, is your renovation of the city hall. And, I know you had a lot of details, but it appeared to go well, and the outcome has been great. And I think everybody's very pleased with it. Had a great ceremony out there, so thank you for that.
Thank you. It always looks like it went well when it's done. It's just the battle during the time that doesn't feel that way.
Yeah, I know the COVID came along and prevented a grand opening long before now, and that would have been nice. I wanted to mention a couple other things, just to kind of tell the council members. I talked about a flash flooding study over in Country Club, Arkansas. That's still kind of going on. Our city engineer's done a preliminary look at that, and I need to read the preliminary report, but at least that's still going. We don't know what the cost is. He has said that it doesn't look like it would need a major study. He thinks probably we can fix 2 or 3 things and improve the situation. So, but that's very preliminary, and if I'm saying that wrong, let me know.
I think that's fairly accurate. There's the as I understood what he was saying is the bigger issue. The issues that the residents were mostly complaining about could be solved with local issues, is what they were thinking, as opposed to something that required that comprehensive hydrological study.
Okay.
So, yes, fairly accurate. Everything you said was accurate.
So anyway, I just want to put that out there so everybody can be kind of up to date on what we're looking at there. And then I did get with Captain Ivy over at the police department. We had a couple of complaints, I did anyway, of hunting over on the island and that sort of thing. And they were asking if we could put some no hunting signs out there. Apparently there aren't any. A lot of people don't know they can't hunt out there. It's in the city limits. You can apparently hunt if you're in a boat on the water, but you cannot hunt if you're on the ground. So anyway, we're proceeding on that a little bit. Mr. Hogan's involved. I think he's kind of making up the signs, but it's still in process, and the mayor hadn't signed off on it yet. So I don't know if we got it going for good or not, but at least it's a little bit going on it.
I have no problem. The issue for us has been one of logistics, I think, has been the issue, because you can't just kind of walk out there and place the signs. So I think we're having to work with other agencies to get equipment. Is that, I'm getting some head nods, yeah.
Okay, that or I could maybe arrange a pontoon boat from somebody along the.
Yeah, it's a boat plus getting the equipment over and, yeah, so but yeah, I don't have a problem with it.
Okay,
Not sure it's,
great. I think that's all I've got tonight. Thank you very much.
any additional councilmember comments? Seeing none, city attorney comments?
No comments.
City clerk comments?
Just super quick, you guys have some really important documents at your seat. I need you guys to update your code books. I've offered to do them for you. No one's turned them in. So just read the instructions at the bottom of the sheet.
Thank you. I did have one other thing. I had it in FYI. That was my mistake. I'd meant to put it up in mayor's comments. I included a couple ordinances that deal with some of the procedure. A lot of times, tonight's a good example of a meeting that was not overly rigid with people just kind of chiming in without going through that order, and that works a lot of times. But we're also, I received a complaint from someone on the council that is concerned about some of the actions that have been taking place. So I was looking through the city code and found a couple things that I just wanted to point out. And I think that's I think we ought to be stricter in our adherence to procedure and policy when we have the more controversial issues coming up. On an issue like the dog ordinance tonight, for example, everyone was getting along, everything seemed fine. But then we have contentious issues that arise sometimes, and you've got people speaking out of turn or calling into question some folks' integrity. So I just wanted to read a couple of these sections here, just for the record. And I'm looking at Maumelle City Code Section 2-82, says every member of the city council desiring to speak shall address the chair, and upon recognition by the presiding officer shall confine himself to the question under debate and shall avoid all personalities and indecorous language. A city council member, once recognized, shall not be interrupted while speaking unless called to order by the presiding officer. In subsection E, it says, all members of the city council shall accord the utmost courtesy to each other, to its city employees, and to members of the public appearing before the city council, and shall refrain at all times from rude or derogatory remarks, reflections as to integrity, abusive comments, and statements as to motives and personalities. And there's a little bit more in there, but I just wanted to point those out as I think that they spoke to the issue being complained about. We do have an ethics resolution. This is, of course, stronger than a resolution. It is the law of the city. So with that bummer tone, I'll conclude and would entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
I've got a motion. Did I get a second? Second. All right. All those in favor of adjourning, say yes.
Yes. Yes.
All opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you very much.
Madam City Clerk, I've never received